Hey everybody, I'm Scott Weichel. You're listening to My Kind of Country. Thanks so much for joining us on a Monday night. My guest tonight is a multi-million selling artist, Grammy Hall of Fame inducted, and she's won so many great awards. And her signature song, of course, is Harper Valley PTA. And we're going to talk about that tonight. There are some new releases that have come out this year on her music from Bear Family Records, and also a limited edition vinyl of the original Harper Valley PTA album. And we're going to talk about those releases, and we're going to play a whole bunch of songs off of them for you tonight. And it is a pleasure to welcome my dear friend Jeannie C. Riley to My Kind of Country. Jeannie C., how are you tonight?
I'm good. And how are you, Scott?
Well, I could not be any better. I am so glad to have you on the air with us tonight. I always enjoy our conversations, and so do my listeners.
Well, I knew you were good, but I thought I'd ask anyway. That sounds like something I should say, but you're always good.
Well, it
You're one of
helps.
the best people I know, so I knew you was good.
Well, it helps when I got good people like you to be on the show with me. That's the secret right there, you know.
We've done this before. Yeah, I remember one time we was going to do a 20-minute interview, and I think it was a 2-hour one.
Yeah, well, that's all right. Hey, it's my show. I can put it on as long as I want. So heck, we can talk till the cows come home. You know, I love it. There's been some fantastic releases that have come out on you this year, and one of them is from our friends Bear Family over in Germany. Bear-family.com is their website, and the CD is called On the Honky Tonk Highway with Jeannie C. Riley, and you can get that at their website, and there are 29 tracks on this stellar release, and all songs from your period, Jeannie C., of 1968 to 1971. And I understand that they sent you a copy of this too, right?
They sent me 2 copies, and of course, I was thrilled with them. You know, they did it in such a classy way. It's just something to really be proud of. The fact that it has 29 songs in it. It's got, I'm going to guess, 30, 40 pages maybe of biography and pictures, and it's so neat. A lot of times, most of the time, if the musicians are given credit for playing on the sessions, it'll just tell you who's playing, and it may list 3 or 4 guitar players. It may list 2 or 3 different drummers. But the way the Bear family record did it, you get the full information on each cut, so that you can stand and listen, and you wonder, I wonder who's playing the steel guitar on that. And you can look down, oh, Weldon Mike was playing on that, or whoever, you know. It's the neatest thing that I've ever had released. You know, I can't take anything from the Harper Valley album as far as concept goes, but as far as packaging, I've never had anything even compared to it.
It's a beautiful collection, and so many great pictures in there, and as you mentioned, just great discography information, and it breaks down every single song, and there's a story about all the songs in there. And when you were reading through it, Jeannie C., was there anything in there that you'd kind of forgotten about that kind of stuck out in your mind?
Well, you know, I haven't even made it all the way through, but I will say this, they sure got their act together when they were putting, as far as I've read, they were just about right on everything. Maybe a little item or 2 that don't amount to a hill of beans, but they told my story well. If I had never written a book before, I would say that this is it, you know.
Well, that's wonderful, and of course, Harper Valley PTA is on there, and The Girl Most Likely. So many great songs: Country Girl, Darling Days.
They're especially featuring one that I had forgotten about doing, and I love it. It's called "Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil." They're using that as the title cut on the Honky Tonk Highway with Jeannie C. Riley. Tell the truth and shame the devil. They focused on one that was super neat, and I've got to tell you, you know, Scott, I've always had a problem with confidence. I know you know that. I've talked to you about that before. Based a lot on the fact that I was only given my to record in the studio while the musicians were taking down the number system for each of the songs, maybe one or two takes, and they've got it. That's how long I had to work on my songs the whole time I was at Plantation Records. It was just on-the-spot recordings. And as a result, I would be trying to learn the melody, the meaning of the song, of the lyrics, the phrasing. And in those days, you'll remember I had so many words in a line. You know, Harper Valley, how you have to bounce the words. I would make a marking, you know, put these two words together, leave a space, and then put these next three together. I make little markings, and I had to learn just on the spot. Well, I would hear like flat notes, and I would tell my producer, Shelby Single, and I say, Shelby, I've got to do this one over again because I was flat here and there. And he would say, oh, you ain't going to buy any of those records anyway, and the fans won't know the difference. But a lot of the fans do. They may not know what's wrong with it, but they can tell they don't like how something sounds. And within the industry that I was in, believe me, they knew. People in the high places in country music and the artists themselves, they knew. And so I got the idea that a lot of people thought I didn't have any talent. And I spent a whole lot of my career feeling so much lesser than. But I'm going to tell you about this Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil, something that I picked up on that Shelby had told me. Shelby Singleton, for those listening, was the producer of Harper Valley PTA. He had told me when he was recording me, and I would do my own harmony. And you know, he had produced Patty Page's volumes 1 and 2. Patty Page Does Country, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my original female favorite. I've often wondered if there never had been a Patty Page, would there ever have been a me, you know? Because I just worshipped her, and I would stand in front of our family's cabinet model radio record player, and the DJ would announce her as, and now here is the many voices of Patty Page. Well, that's because she was stacking tracks and doing 2 and 3, 4-part harmony, whatever, you know. And I thought that she was doing that all at once. I mean, what did a child, like 6, 7 years old, what did a child know about a recording studio and stacking tracks? I thought she was singing with all those voices coming out of her at once. and I thought, well, she's magic. I would go to my dresser and look in the mirror. I'd get a tablespoon or a hairbrush or something, and I would gyrate. I'd twist my neck every which way and strain, trying to produce more than one voice, but I never could. You know? But I loved Patty Page, and I thought no one could sing like her. I mean, listen to Tennessee Waltz, and you might agree with me. But anyway, Shelby Singleton had produced, not Tennessee Waltz, but he produced all her country stuff that I grew up on. I bought those country albums with my, saved up my once-a-week allowance. Anyway, he told me that my harmony reminded him of her. Well, I could never receive that. No way could I even come close to Patty Page. And I'm not saying now that I did, but I will tell you this. Several cuts on the Bear Family record, most especially To Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil. Do you know, for the first time in my life, I actually can hear her in my voice. When I harmonize, I can, not just the harmony, but I can hear the sound of my voice being reminiscent of hers at times. No way do I have a voice as fine as Patty Page, but I can hear her in me. And that's the highest compliment I've ever paid myself.
The quality of these recordings is absolutely fantastic. That's one thing Bear Family always does. Every time they put out a release, you know it's going to be the best possible sound quality and packaging that you can ever get.
Very good. I'll tell you that. I appreciate them. So I hope they realize how much I appreciate them. I'm going to write them a thank you.
Well, that's great. Well, Detloff Hogan was the gentleman that took care of that, and we'll make sure that he gets a copy of this interview so he can hear a personal thank you from you live on the air. How's that?
That's great. I mean, they just did a super job.
They did. And folks, again, please go to bear-family.com, and we will put that information on our Facebook page. And the CD is called Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil on the Honky Tonk Highway with Jeannie C. Riley. Jeannie C., tell me about the picture on the cover where you're standing next to, it looks like a tour bus there.
Well, I can tell you exactly where I was. That was my tour bus at the time. I was in Hartford, Connecticut, and that is an Ovation guitar that Ovation had given me. They gave me 2 guitars that day. They gave me a 12-string, and they gave me the 6-string that I'm holding here. They presented me one, and Glenn Campbell one the same time.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what I'm doing in Hartford, Connecticut. I have been accused of a vulgar gesture on the cover, the way I'm holding it. I wasn't actually playing. I'm posing for a picture, and I went to make a D chord, and apparently my finger got carried away. You see what I'm talking about?
I see what you're talking about. Yep, that's how you make that chord, though. See.
Maybe I'm gesturing in an evil way to the people who are blessing me with a guitar. Anyway, when I would make a D chord, for real, I know it didn't look like that. I overshot the top string.
Oh, well, that's all right. There are some wonderful pictures in here, many I'd never seen before, and I know there's a special one in here because you are standing on stage with the great Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash.
Yes, and when you first open up the CD where it says Jeannie C. Riley, Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil, that blue dress you see me wearing there?
Yeah.
I was wearing that on the Johnny Cash show when Merle was guesting along with me, and that's the same dress I had on with the 2 of them. The pages are not numbered, but when you open up after Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil, where it says Country Girl at the top, that picture of me, I was 16 years old, and that picture came out of one of those 25-cent photo machines. You get 4 pictures for 25 cents. You make your picture and you get out and you wait for just a few minutes and they come sliding out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, is that right? Wow. That's neat.
That's one of those pictures.
Well, folks, you got to get a copy of this. Bear-family.com is the website. And I'm going to take a little break here, and we're going to play some songs off of this great collection for you and come back and talk to Jeannie C. some more. We've got a new record album, vinyl record, that's just been re-released of the original Harper Valley PTA, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So stay with us, folks. All right, we are talking to Jeannie C. Riley, a brand new collection of music called Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil on the Honky Tonk Highway with Jeannie C. Riley. Bear Family Records, bear-family.com is the website for that. And also, Record Store Day. Folks that are collecting vinyl are familiar with Record Store Day. It comes along once a year, and there are a whole bunch of releases that come out in very limited edition. They have this year chosen to re-release the original Harper Valley PTA album in its entirety with the original artwork, and it is on kind of a greenish yellow vinyl, and it's absolutely beautiful. Only 2,500 copies of this made. Jeannie C., you wrote some new liner notes for this collection.
I did. They sent me a few copies of it from Sun Records, and I've seen the picture inside and the story and everything. It is so nice.
Well, I've got one here, and it sounds great. And I must say, the sound is just absolutely fantastic. It sounds better than the original. They really did a great job with it. So.
Oh, by all means. I have to say, my plantation recordings were not the best of my recordings vocally to begin with. I was just learning. Harper Valley PTA was my first master release. Little Darling Records had released a demo prior to that, And then they came, after Harper Valley, they came out with an album that I just don't approve of at all, because all they did was take demos other people had recorded and set my voice on top of theirs, and I had to sing in whatever key they were in. The only two on there that didn't happen with was my two songs. How Can Anything So Right Be So Wrong, and I'd Be a Woman of the World. I got to pick those keys because they were my originals, but that album sounded like almost like 10 or 12 different people, you know, because I'm screeching to reach notes on some, and I'm sounding like a moo cow on some of them. Prior to Harper Valley, that's all I had to show. So Harper Valley PTA was actually my first master release. I'm just getting started, you know. I didn't even have a repertoire built up from my live shows. I recorded that song on the last Friday night in July of '68. It was, I believe, the 28th, Friday the 28th. 1 week later, it's already a hit, and I'm already in Philadelphia taping Teen Beat with Dick Clark. You know, because it went number one pop before it went number one country. And a lot of people confused me with just being a crossover act from pop that just crossed over country, when I was really country that crossed over pop, but nobody knew that being my first record, you know. I worried about that. I worried about losing my country identity before I ever gained it. That album was so ahead of its time. It actually would be in keeping with the music of today. But no, I wouldn't compare it to the country of today because it's not that monotonous.
That's true.
Melodies today disturb me, Scott. It'll be na 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 na. Please change chords. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Monotonous melodies.
Well, if you are lucky enough to find a copy of this, I highly recommend it because it sounds great, it looks great, and as I said, it's the Record Store Day limited edition 2500. And Jeannie C. Riley became the first woman with a #1 hit on both the Billboard pop and country charts with Harper Valley PTA, and that is a milestone for sure. A couple of things, Jeannie C., I wanted to ask you about the Harper Valley album. First of all, on the song Mr. Harper, I know that Pete Drake was the gentleman who did the talking steel guitar, and at the very tail end of that song it says, Shelby, bring me a beer. Is that Pete Drake saying that, or is that someone else doing that? Do you remember that?
Shelby, bring me a beer. His guitar said that. Of course, Pete Drake had to make his guitar say that, but it came out of his guitar, not his own mouth, for sure.
Yeah.
Shelby, bring me a beer. You have to listen really closely to hear it because it's the last trail off line of the song. But if you're listening closely, you can hear it.
Well, listen closely to that. We're going to play Mr. Harper for you. Listen real close to the end of that song. You'll hear what we're talking about. And obviously he's talking about Shelby Singleton, right?
Yeah. Shelby Singleton was the only producer I ever had in my lifetime who let the musicians, the studio musicians, drink beer as they worked, and it seemed good for morale. They seemed to really like him for that reason.
Who is the little girl that is standing on the cover with you on Harper Valley?
Well, you know, interestingly, so many people think that that's my daughter. My daughter was Kim Riley, and the girl on there was, apparently, I guess her last name was Winters. She is the daughter of Audrey Winters, who has been a columnist for many country music publications, and she's also the sister of Pat Chestnut, who was married to Jerry Chestnut, my former boss before I recorded Harper Valley.
Well, now we know who the little girl is anyway, so. Jeannie C., I want to ask you a couple other stories I had written down for us to talk about, and if you've got time, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions.
Sure.
Well, you had mentioned, I have a note here that says, Charlie Pride story, just between you and me.
Oh, yeah, well, it's a sweet personal thing. The only association that Charlie has with the story is the fact that he recorded the song. I moved to Tennessee in August of '66, and it would be our first Christmas going home after having moved away. And I would get homesick for my mom and daddy, and they sure did for me. We were going to go home to Texas for Christmas, and I couldn't afford to make the trip, pay gas, and make the trip and still buy decent Christmas presents. So our Christmas present was going to be the fact that we were going, and but I wanted something to give my loved ones, but with no money. And I was always a daddy's girl, so I especially wanted to buy him a present. I was walking around Kresge's, pushing a basket with my little baby Kim in there. She was born in January, and we're talking about now it's December of '66. And I didn't notice there being an intercom. I didn't hear. Maybe they were already playing music, but I didn't pick up on any. I didn't catch any. But I'm walking around there, and my daddy's favorite song was "Just Between You and Me" by Charlie Pride. He related that song, "Just between you and me, you're too much to forget. So I've lost the only girl I've ever loved, and so I never felt so low, so what?" He was relating that to me moving away. I'm walking around the store, and I'm not sobbing where people are noticing, but I'm crying within, and I'm tearing up because my little old money wasn't going to buy him much of anything. I knew I couldn't spend at the most a couple of dollars for him. And all of a sudden, over the intercom, was it the first song they played, or had they been playing them all along? I did not notice. But when I heard "Just Between You and Me" playing, and it dawned on me, wait a minute, I'm in Kresge's. What if they have a record department? What if the record department is playing its records for people to hear, to encourage them to come by? I thought, just maybe. I go to the record department, and I got the last copy of "Just Between You and Me" for my daddy for Christmas.
Oh, wow.
And it couldn't have been over $1. I doubt if it was that much in those days, because we're speaking of 1966. I was so proud of that. And when I gave him that for Christmas, he just cried like a baby and played it. It played most of that Christmas. So, yeah, that'll forever be my favorite Charlie Pride song.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. What a great story. Well, I know that you got to spend some time around Elvis. I've got to ask you to tell me the Elvis bathroom story.
Well, first of all, Elvis has long been one of my favorites. And so had Fat Domino. The first, I'm going around about way to get to my story, but I think my first inclination for how big Harper Valley was came when I stood outside the Flamingo, and I look up at the marquee, and there's Jeannie C. Riley in giant letters, and there's Fats Domino in tiny letters underneath. Fats Domino playing in the lounge, Jeannie C. in the showroom. I thought, how could this have ever happened? I got a picture of it, and it's in my pictures today somewhere, my photo albums, whatever. So I was visiting in the afternoon with Fats Domino in the lounge, me and my ex-husband, Mickey Riley. Fats kept trying to sell Mickey his rings. He had one for every finger on one hand, in big letters, big diamonds making out F-A-T-S, Fats, huge diamonds. And Mickey was laughing and said, "Fats, what would I do with rings that said Fats? Who would that be? I'm Mickey, you're Fats, But anyway, we had fun with him. He was out there working off a gambling debt to the casino. So he wasn't actually getting paid. He was just working night after night. And that's why he was trying to sell his rings. I thought all that was so interesting. And while I was visiting him, here comes Elvis Presley. And sat down with us and started talking. We spent the afternoon, me and Elvis and Fats and my husband. I got to visit with two of my heroes throughout the afternoon. Well, we went to Part. And by the way, Fats was lovable. Just because he's working off a debt doesn't take anything from him, because he was fun. He was cute. He was funny. And I just enjoyed the heck out of meeting him. But meeting Elvis was a little more exciting, I have to say. When Elvis went to leave, I believe it was Colonel Tom he was walking off with, because he had been there with him. They were leaving and asked me, would I mind if Elvis came to my show that night? Would I mind? Oh, I knew I'd be nervous, but oh, by all means, you are welcome to come. I'd have been a fool to not make him welcome. Anyway, he came, and when I say we, I'm talking about the band, and I were peeping out of the curtains. We were watching when they brought him in. We wondered where he was sit, and indeed, if he really would come. Well, they waited till they had cleared the tables of the food, but they would continue to serve drinks the rest of the evening, so they had to have one little pin circle of light, aperture of light, or whatever you want to call it, from above, that they could see well enough to get around to bringing drinks or whatever, that the help could see what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it was pitch dark in that room. We're watching, and here comes Elvis, and they brought him in, and I would like to know who planned this. Either the house, Colonel Tom, or God. And I kind of think the latter. They brought him in and set him down where that one circle of light hit on his face. I got to see the face of Elvis Presley out there several rows back. It wasn't at the stage front. I could see maybe the first tables, about the people that were the closest to the stage, could see them a little, but the lights blinded me. Otherwise, I could see no one out there except the face of Elvis Presley the entire time I was doing my show. But anyway, after my show, he asked if I'd mind if he came by the dressing room to visit a little while. Elvis said he was just going to visit for a little while, but after he got with us, he got comfortable, realizing that we had so much in common. We both had Pentecostal leanings spiritually, and we grew up poor. And I remember we spent a while talking about what we liked on our cheeseburgers, just comfortable stuff. And the Memphis Mafia, who was always with him, certain of his friends, had accompanied him to the room, but stayed outside. Every few minutes, they'd open the door and look in to make sure he's okay. I don't know what they thought we'd do to him, It was me and my ex-husband, the Chamber of Commerce president from my hometown, and the lady who she and her husband had the dry goods store that was best known in Addison, Texas, my hometown. People like that. I think my sister may possibly have done, but anyway, none of us would have done Elvis harm, but they kept peeping in, maybe to see if he wanted to go. Who knows why? But he kept shooing them away like, it's okay, because he was comfortable. And there's pictures that have circulated on me and him where you can see that he's comfortable to the point that he has slid down on the couch and put one leg over his knee, and it looks like his rump is about to leave the couch. I know you've seen that picture.
Yeah.
But anyway, by the way, there were different poses, but there's one I would like to clarify. One of them, I'm playing with his tie. I think that looks too intimate. I sit them in all the time, and I don't play with their tie. But the photographer making the picture suggested, oh, do something, play with his tie. So I played with his tie, but I was told to do that. But anyway, after about an hour of visiting, I guess he figured it was time to go. And he asked me if he could use my restroom before he left, which cleared up a question that I always had. Would somebody as important as Elvis Presley have to use the restroom? And when he came back out and ready to go, we said our byes. He left out, and my ex-husband, who just never paid me in any mind, he was so macho, why would he, you know? But he sat there slowly shaking his head, and he said, that's the prettiest man I've ever seen in my life. and I'll tell you, he was by far prettier than any picture I've ever seen of him. But anyway, I was the one sitting next to the door that leads to the dressing room, which leads to the bathroom. I looked around the room, and I knew that the other women were wanting to do what I was about to do. I wanted to be the first one on that toilet after the king left the building. And I was.
That's
yep.
great.
Now, you want more information? Too much information? My husband's going to spank me. I thought about this. I have told people for years that I got to go back there. And I was the first one on the throne after the king left the building. I have enjoyed telling that so many times. But just a few months ago, I was crushed by the thought, for heaven's sakes, if all he had to do was pee, he didn't get on the throne. He messed up what I've been saying all these years. If he just stood, well, no, he never sat where I sat.
I love it. What a great story. Well, folks, again, please go to bear-family.com. Pick up a copy of this wonderful CD on the Honky Tonk Highway with Jeannie C. Riley, Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil. And go to recordstoreday.com and try to see if you can find yourself a copy of Harper Valley PTA on vinyl. It's a beautiful album. And we're going to play some more songs from Jeannie C.
I guess you've got them all planned. But I want to call one to your attention that my daughter favors to all things I ever recorded. She loves Am I That Easy to Forget? I actually do too. There were some that I never had cared for that I did, that I now like after what the Bear Family Records has done to it. Some I don't even remember doing. But I really like that one. I remember recording Dallas Frazier's Darling Days and thinking that I didn't do very good on it. But whatever I hear on the Bear Family record, I love Darling Days again. That's one of those pure country things that I went to Nashville to do, and then got to do very little of, having had a record to be #1 pop first, you know.
Well, we'll play that one for sure. You know, it also occurred to me that you did Before the Next Teardrop Falls on this project. Was that before Freddie Fender released that song?
That's another story. That is another story. I had recorded Before the Next Teardrop Falls, and I will say this, I did not know the song. It's a great song. I know Ben Peters wrote it, who wrote Kiss an Angel Good Morning, which I also recorded later. But I wasn't sure of myself on it, and I thought I did a bad job. But again, I don't sound bad on the Bear Family record. They did something magical with my voice. But that is my track. Freddie Fender's is my track. This is exactly what they did. They added a track or two musically to it, and they either lowered it or raised it a half step for him. But that is my track that was charged back to me out of my royalties, and it was given to Huey Moe for Freddie Fender. And I love Freddie Fender, and I worked with him a number of times, and every time I did, and I'd pass him backstage or outside, going into the building or whatever, he would wink and he would nudge me with his left arm. He'd say, thank you, you know what for.
Well, that's interesting.
Huey Moe didn't have to pay to go into the studio to take his artist. He got it free from Shelby, but I paid for it.
Wow, well, that's some good history right there. That's great.
I know I have told you about the TV set that one of Shelby's songwriters, who happened to be married to my best friend, Jerry Clark. I called her my daughter called her Kinda Mama. I was Mama, and she was Kinda Mama. When she wanted to refer to her, she said, that Kinda Mama. So everybody started calling her that. So that was her name. But she was married to Shelby Singleton's writer, Roy Clark, who recorded under the name of Clark Bentley. I think he wrote I believe he wrote his one name and recorded as the other. In fact, the night I recorded Harper Valley PTA, Shelby Singleton was saving himself some money because he was going to record him and me. We had a split session. I was only given an hour and a half recording time, and he was given the other hour and a half. So we did Harper Valley PTA, the first song. Never sung it before, but while the band was copying down the number system that they used, and instead of music notes, they didn't use numbers. We hadn't been in the studio 15 minutes. In that length of time, they had listened to the song and charted it with the numbers, and we had recorded one. And I'm going to say it was about 8 minutes into the session, no more than that, or 9 maybe. And Shelby Singleton's wife at the time, she said, the last line of Harper Valley was the day my mama broke up the Harper Valley PTA. And Shelby Singleton's wife said, that's an awful big song to go nowhere on the end like that. She said, why don't you take that line from Laugh In and say the day my mama stalked into the Harper Valley PTA? Well, everybody, including the musicians, by all means, everybody was excited about what they were hearing anyway, and what they were playing. So, yeah, that was important that we changed that. But the entire track, or the entire master that would be finally released, was done in the first 15 minutes of that session. And
wow.
Nothing was ever added or subtracted from it. That song was just flat meant to be.
That's
I didn't
amazing.
even know it, didn't even want to do it. I didn't hear the potential in it, and I don't think anybody else would have heard the particular demo that I did on it. And let me clear it up right off the bat. It was not Margie Singleton that I heard. To this day, I have never heard Margie Singleton's Harper Valley PTA. She was Shelby Singleton's ex-wife. And a lot of people know that she recorded the song, but I never heard hers. I heard a disc jockey's wife doing it. And I guess she was probably a good singer, but she didn't know how to sell that song. And she was trying to whisper it like, Ode to Billy Joe by Bobby Gentry. What worked for? It was the 3rd of June, another sleepy, dusty tells the day. With Harper Valley, I want to tell you all a story, It had a whole different approach, and she just didn't land in the right spot. I did not hear the potential, and the Stockton 2 line was not there, and there was another line that troubled me. It was Mr. Harper couldn't be here because his wife's got him locked up in the den. And I'm thinking, well, why is he locked up in the den? Is he an epileptic and he's foaming at the mouth? He forgot to take his medicine, or is he cheating on his wife and she's got him locked up so he can't get out and get to his lover, or is he drunk? Maybe. But I put him in Kelly's bar, and now we know he was drunk. There were just things about it. The song was great. I mean, you can't take away from the song just for a couple of lines, but all together, the music did not fit. Her voice didn't fit. The whole feeling was not there. But I'll tell you what, the first playback I heard on it, I sure changed my mind in a heartbeat. You know, that song was just meant to be, and I was mad at having to do it because I didn't want to be on Plantation Records. That was going to be a brand new label geared for country music, and I wanted to be on the same label as Connie Smith and other people on RCA Records. I wanted to be one of those voices coming out of that gramophone and that little dog looking up at it, you know. I wanted to be one of those, not the Plantation Records. And also, Shelby Singleton said there's too many Jeannies in country music. You know, there's Jeannie Phoebe, there's Jeannie Pruitt, there's Jeannie Shepherd, there's too much Jeannie. So he wanted to change my name to Rhonda Renee. And I thought, well, the people back home, my family back home won't even know it's me when my record comes out. And besides all that, that sounds like the name of a pole dancer. Something, you know. I was told a lie by my friends. Kinda Mama and her husband, Shelby Singleton, did promise them the B-side of Harper Valley. There's no such thing as B-sides anymore. We know that. But back then, when a record was released, the B-side sold just as much as the A-side, even if it was never heard. And by the way, the Bear Family Records closes the whole 29-song CD, Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil, with the B-side of Harper Valley, Yesterday, All Day Long, Today, written by my friends. But they told me lies. They said I had to sign a 3-year contract to do the song. And my attitude was, now I've got to throw 3 years of my life away because my friends have asked me. They were a little older than me. Not quite old enough to be my parents, but about halfway in between me and my parents. And they said, you know, we've been here for a number of years. It might be our last chance to get something going. You're young. You know, if it doesn't work out, you've got plenty of time left. And then they lied to me and told me that Shelby had said, if it's not a hit, I'll tear up a contract. He did not say that. They told me another lie, that he had decided that I could use my real name. And at that point, he had not. So all I knew is I was angry at my friends for putting me on the spot, angry at myself for not being able to say no, angry at Shelby Singleton because he had told me in his office that he was going to cut me a number 1 pop record when all I wanted was a country record. So I thought. But, you know, when Harper Valley went across the board and even became a soul hit, on R&B, it was I don't know if it went to number 1 or not. It did in the pop field first, you know, but it was such a hit in R&B that I was put on tour with James Brown and Wilson Pickett and made to close the show over them because of the magnitude of my record. Now, what do you do after these guys have done everything but commit suicide on stage for the fans, especially James Brown? Can you imagine following James Brown, even if your audience there is not into soul music? When you watched his show, you would know that nobody would want to follow James Brown.
Yeah,
but I had to. I had to. But I knew that when I heard the playback that I had the next number 1 song in the record. The next number 1 song on the radio, and I knew it was going to be a million seller. Of course, it outdid that by many million. But I went home that night after listening. Everybody stayed, including the session musicians who they heard everything that came down the pike in the studios. They would do their job and go home, but not that night. They wouldn't go home. In fact, they'd call their friends. First thing you know, what was a closed session, just a private session, turned out to be the entire studio was full, and so was the control room. People listening to Harper Valley. That's when I met Tom T. Hall. He had been sitting in Tootsie's Orchid Lounge nearly a mile away from the Columbia studio where I was recording. But somebody on the session was a friend of his and called him. I'm sure he didn't have a cell phone in those days, but he was known to hang around Tootsie's Orchid Lounge every evening. So they called Tootsie's and asked for Tom. He came to the phone. They said, if you want to see one of your songs making history, you better get down to Columbia Studio. And I'm told that he did not have a car in those days, that he ran all the way down there. And that's when I met Tom DeYoung.
That's great. Well, folks, there's the inside story of Harper Valley PTA, and we're going to close out with that one. This is the one that got it all started, and it's still going today. And it's going to be going for many, many years to come. And Jeannie C., I just love you so much. Thank you so much for taking time to be on my show tonight and sharing all these wonderful stories with my listeners.
I always love to visit with you, and I, I don't know all your listeners, but I sure appreciate the fact that they like real, true country music, my kind of country and your kind of country.
All right.